gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So obviously there was a pretty significant shift in our politics this past week with the Trump landslide election, especially now that Arizona's been called. I mean, it's a pretty historic election, but I'm not sure about you, but for me, there's just something eerily calm about it. I was so surprised that we had a winner during election night. I'm surprised that Kamala has graciously conceded. And it makes me wonder what's up their sleeves, because it just doesn't really match the energy that we've felt for the past 3.5 years. And so joining me today is my good friend Mike Adams, who I'm sure you've heard of. Fantastic guy there, the Health Ranger, Brighteon, a prolific entrepreneur that's really fighting for free speech. But we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but one of the main topics is what's coming next, because it just seems too calm. So folks, enjoy the interview with Mike Adams. All right, listen up, folks. I've got a new sponsor at Hear.com/Seth. I'd love to have you check them out. If you've ever been frustrated with hearing loss, Hear.com is exactly where you need to go. These folks are the real deal. They've got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, a 4.9 rating at Consumer Affairs, and over 500,000 people are already loving their super tiny, super powerful German hearing aids. Look how small this thing is. 500,000 people, folks, and the positive reviews just keep rolling in. So take Jerry, a podcast listener who wrote in saying the in-home exam made everything so convenient and his new devices are extremely comfortable compared to the old ones. Or James, who called working with Hear.com a total win and said it's one of the best investments he's ever made. You know what the best part is? With insurance, flexible financing options, and 100% money-back guarantee, Hear.com makes getting great hearing aids super easy. Not to mention these things are tiny. No one's even going to see them on your ear. So if you're ready to stop saying, "What?" and start hearing the world clearly again, now is the time. So right now at Hear.com/Seth, you can sign up for an exclusive 45-day no-risk trial, and you'll get a free hearing aid consultation so you can hear the difference yourself. So folks, what are you waiting for? Head over to Hear.com/Seth. That's Hear.com/Seth. Mr. Mike Adams, it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you back on the show. It's been way too long. Thanks for being here.
Wow, Seth, it has been way too long. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored to join you here today, and we have a lot to talk about, don't we?
We do. We do.
Wow.
There's a lot to talk about. And I guess I'll start by framing where my mind is at, because I find that whenever I sync up with you, we're oftentimes thinking about the same things. And it's not the kabuki theater. It's the deep, the bigger issues. And, what I'm looking at here is, if you look at the depth of corruption of our systems that make up our country, the fabric of our country and our society, not just our country, it's really the world. We're up against systems that are hundreds, maybe even thousands of years old, getting into these bloodlines and getting into what's really controlling a lot of this world. And while it's obviously it's positive news to see that, as I would say, democracy kind of worked, right? Which is kind of strange. To me, it seemed almost too easy. Like I was thinking, okay, maybe Trump will end up getting in, but it might take, a week of back and forth or whatever, which we can kind of talk about that. But where my mind is going is, if he just has another 4 years as a Republican president, it's not going to fix hardly anything, because the agencies, the DOJ, the education system, the media, I mean, so many of these massive systems are so corrupted. And not just that, we're at war. I mean, he's not a normal president. This is a wartime presidency. And as much as the mainstream media want to say he'll come in and be a dictator, I mean, to be honest, I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be done that aren't your regular presidential roles, that, you have to go through all the different, normal processes and everything. I mean, this is a wartime president, and the enemy that we're up against, the communist globalist factions that stole the election in 2020 and have tried to completely destroy America. It's not just, bad policies and the left wants their way and the right wants their way. This is much deeper. So what would you like to see over the next 4 years that could actually change how this system is being run in a way that actually will give us a future that will last another 100, 200 years?
Hmm. Wow. Well, I would say, I mean, first of all, I love the context, and thanks for bringing us in that way. I would say that just as, and this is I'll bring in a spiritual component here. Just as through God, we are here on Earth. We are spirits that are behind enemy lines on this planet. This planet has been infiltrated by evil and Satanism and destruction and, blood and suffering and all that. Well, in the same way, Trump and RFK Jr. and everybody that is about to transition into Washington, D.C., they will be behind enemy lines there as well. And Seth, you and I both know a lot of people who are going to be joining Team Trump. I mean, we both interviewed a lot of people who are going to be joining. And we know that they're good people, but they're going into an evil, corrupt system, as you alluded to. And as I'm trying to share this idea that, I understand the celebration, Kamala and Biden, it was a Marxist evil regime. It had to be defeated and dismantled, and that process is underway. However, celebrating the fact that, our people, let's say, are going to be in charge of a beast system that is intrinsically too powerful, too large, too evil, and deeply infiltrated by nefarious, pompous, arrogant, power-hungry people. This does not bode well for our future, because 4 years later, it can, switch back to evil people running the evil system. This evil system itself is the root of this problem. A government that is so large and so well-funded and has so much free time on its hands that it can break down someone's door and go in and exterminate their pet squirrel. Well, that's a government that's too big and too powerful. And the only way that humanity ultimately gets set free is to transcend this idea that the state is our savior. That if we just have the right people running the state, then we're all going to be free. Not a chance, not a chance. Because every agency wants more power, more money, more control. It creates its own laws, as we saw with ATF, FDA, CDC, you name it. And increasingly, these agencies have been weaponized against the American people, strongly weaponized. We saw that during COVID. We saw that with the lawfare targeting Trump. We've seen it with, punitive IRS audits, punitive FDA action against companies, and so on. So ultimately, the answer is, frankly, the dismantling of the state itself, which means massive decentralization of power back to the people, decentralized money, which is not the dollar, decentralized medicine, which is not the FDA, decentralized business, decentralized speech, which is not big tech platforms. This is the ultimate answer for humanity, and that won't happen in 4 years, probably. And it won't happen through government. It will happen despite government. That's my take.
And I know that you've interviewed Martin Armstrong many times, and as I have as well. And he's, again, one of these people that I think that is looking not just at the current, but he's looking at the cycles of history. And that's one thing I think that needs to be considered here, is that Trump, while okay, of course he can come in, in a lot of ways he's an outsider. I think that he still has some levers that are controlling him. If you look at a lot of his donors and everything, I mean, there is that relationship we can't ignore, right? But I would say that by and large, he is an outsider. I think he truly is America first. He cares about the future for his grandchildren and the generations to follow. But if you go back to Martin Armstrong in his analysis of the cycles of history, Trump can't change those cycles of history. Trump can't stop the collapse of a fiat currency that is at the end of its life cycle. Trump
That's right.
can't. There's a lot of things that he can't do. And with Martin, what he talks about is all of his models are showing him that by, say, around 20 or 30 or so, most governments around the world are actually being dissolved. Like he doesn't see a future past that. And to me, is as much as I'd like to believe that Trump can get back in and make some changes, and all of a sudden we're entering this golden age of America where there's true freedoms again. We're building freedom cities. We got flying cars and all these things. I think that would be great if we weren't living in a world that was ruled by multiple factions of evil cabals that are ultimately Satan's minions. And so, pardon me. So when you look at this future, I mean, it seems like Martin's assessment really matches what you're saying, is that the system, the very system itself, has to change. And I think that a lot of Americans aren't ready to face that fact.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up. Martin Armstrong does indeed. He's got great wisdom and experience. He knows what's coming. And so did Ron Paul, by the way, to his credit. And Ron Paul has been right all along. The Federal Reserve should should be shut down. So let me add this. Humanity will never be free as long as governments can counterfeit currency. That's a fact. So what does human freedom begin to look like in a monetary system? It means a decentralized currency that no government can counterfeit. Well, there's something that already exists like that now. It's called Bitcoin, for example. And I'm not a big Bitcoin shill here, by the way. I'm just pointing out the obvious. Gold also can't be counterfeited. I am a big advocate of gold and silver and things that governments can't counterfeit. Even the new BRICS settlement currency system that the BRICS nations are forming, they're strongly motivated to do so because of U.S. economic sanctions around the dollar. The BRICS currency cannot be counterfeited by nations either, and it's supposed to be 40% backed by gold. Now, whether BRICS will succeed or fail is anyone's guess. It's very complex to have the other 60% be a basket of currencies, and how do you finish the imbalances in the settlements and so on. But I think humanity is ready to move past this era of centralized money controlled by a corrupt government regime, whether that regime is the old Soviet Union or communist China or North Korea or modern day United States of America. The creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, 1913 to today, that's enough. We've suffered enough under the confiscatory policies of a Federal Reserve that steals money from you by printing it. That is the number one cause of poverty in America. It's also the number one cause of wars and violence around the world. If the US government couldn't borrow printed currency and just write itself a bunch of IOUs in the form of treasuries, do you think the US could fund wars in Ukraine or Israel or maybe coming up in Taiwan? No, the answer is no. The dollar was used against us. The dollar was used to give the CDC $1 billion budget for COVID propaganda in order to brainwash people with lies and deceptions so that they would agree to line up and suicide themselves during the pandemic. So the source of so much of the evil and suffering in the world today is the dollar and any currency that can be printed by any government. That era needs to come to an end for a real golden age to be unleashed. And by the way, Trump is not the top guy on this tech, but someone like Elon Musk, he gets this. And this may be one of the more positive influences of Elon and maybe Peter Thiel and others is to realize the dollar's done. How do we transition into a true golden era of decentralized currency and money, which has to be digital in some form? We don't want a centralized CBDC system run by the government. We need government out of our business, and then a golden age can commence. That's my take.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up because there's as much talk as there is about how to change America and everything. I'm not seeing a lot of discussion on the abolishing of the Federal Reserve. I know Ron Paul has talked about it. He's written a book about it. He's advocated that, but it seems like that's almost like it's like the dead man's switch or in some way. That's you don't cross that line. But I think that if we want to fix this country, I couldn't agree more that we have to go back into where the problems really started. And the problems didn't start under Obama. The problems didn't start under the Bushes or the Clintons. The problems started over 100 years ago. And actually, in fact, much longer than that. I think from day one of this country's independence, there were already agents of the British Crown, agents of the global cabal infiltrating our government and figuring out how to set up a system here they could still control and manipulate and weaponize our military in ways that they needed to. And so, and these are topics, though, that I feel like they need to be brought up because it seems like obviously there's this, especially for conservatives, there's this big exhale, okay? But I feel like in many ways the war's just started because we've still got millions, probably millions. I'd probably say millions. Obviously, we have millions of illegals, but probably tens or hundreds of thousands of enemy combatants and combatants living, in our soil. We've seen just a small peak of that with the Venezuelan gangs. But my concern is that that people might want to put their feet up and like, okay, Trump's in charge now and everything's gonna be great. But my when I look forward, I'm thinking, okay, the stock market, if you look at the stock market, it's been propped up and glued together and duct tape up to keep it going. I feel like it was part of the strategy to not let it collapse under the Biden, Kamala, regime. So, the question I have is, what do you think comes next? Because I feel like that under the past couple of years, people were very focused on preparedness. They're very focused on there could be disaster, there could be famine, there could be all kinds of things happening. You look at the warnings from Michael Yon, financial collapse, grid down scenarios. And I just worry that a lot of Americans will think that, hey, we can kind of relax now. Whereas I feel like that actually it's the opposite. Like I feel like that right now, America is under more threat than it ever has been, especially with Trump coming back in.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. This transition of power, Kamala calling Trump and conceding, too easy, too
Yeah.
obvious. The Democrats now suddenly pretending like they support a transition of power away from themselves to the man that they have been calling Hitler for years. Like suddenly they're playing nice, like, oh, we support democracy. No, they don't. No, they don't. They despise democracy. They rig every election. They're still rigging this election. They're stealing Senate seats and House seats right now as we're talking. They are plotting a way to destroy Trump and destroy America if they have to in order to achieve that. And I was just talking with Michael Yon before I got on with you. And I talk with people like Matt Bracken, and I talk with a lot of deeply embedded, intel community, former military intelligence, et cetera. And it's very clear to me that the most effective Democrat plan to harm Trump and harm America would be to wait for him to be sworn in, pretend to support the transition of power the whole time, let him be sworn in January 20th, and then at that point, unleash the domestic over 500,000 enemy combatants that already occupy this nation, that have access to weapons caches all across the country, including RPGs and surface-to-air missiles, IEDs, drones with explosives. And then they will go into massive sabotage operations at the same time that Trump is authorizing the rounding up and deporting of illegals. On top of that, you have governors like the governor of Massachusetts that just now announced that she will defy the federal government and will use state resources to protect illegals. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Probably she should be arrested and charged with treason, and Trump should send in, federal marshals or whoever to arrest every governor that does that. But if he does that, then that feeds right into the left-wing agenda. He's Hitler. Look, we told you he's Hitler. And then with enough chaos, they forced Trump to declare a kind of martial law, a kind of national emergency, and to put troops on the streets, because you will have this eruption of over 500,000 enemy combatants that have been sent GPS coordinates of targets to hit. And I've got strong intel on this from multiple sources, Seth. You may have heard me talking about some of this, but they're going to go after power grid substations. They're going to bomb bridges, ports, oil refineries. They're also going to attack law enforcement, sheriff's offices, police stations, etc. They're going to try to turn America into chaos as a kind of rug pull underneath Trump. And on top of that, I wouldn't be surprised if elements of the deep state then unleash their own false flag domestic cyber attacks against the banking system, against the power grid. They could even detonate dirty bombs or even an EMP weapon against ourselves just to blame Trump. So I know how evil and nefarious these Democrats are. I know how evil the deep state was. What they did to Trump in his first term, that was just a warm-up round. What they're planning to do to Trump in his now technically his third term, because he won 3 times, that's going to make 2017 through 2021 look like a cakewalk. So get ready for all that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And I look, I don't want to be a black pillar or doom and gloom, but I'm a realist, right? And my food supply is a reflection of that. That I don't trust the government, I don't
Right.
trust the food systems, and I know that you certainly believe these same things. I mean, it's funny because the other day I was I walked in the kitchen, my wife was like, "Uh oh, Seth." I was like, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Mike Adams struck again." I was like, "What happened?" She's like, I just ordered a bunch of prepping supplies again. I go, what was it this time? And she just ordered a bunch. We just had 3 packages show up from your warehouse because she's still stocking up on your
Oh,
colloidal
wow.
silver, all kinds of things like that that we're using all the time as part of our household. And
Yes.
and that's when you go back to the art of war, right? Sun Tzu, one of the most I think profound parts of his military doctrine is when you're strong, act weak, and when you're weak, act strong. And
That's
when I
right.
see the behavior of the people that spent 4 years attacking and threatening and everything, and you're right, at now there's this peaceful transition, and they're now kind of openly talking about how some of their policies may have been a little too far, far for, stretched and everything. It doesn't feel right. It's almost like when it gets really calm before a storm and everyone's like, "Oh, great. This is wonderful. Let's go have a cookout." And the guy that knows what storms are like is saying, "No, no, there's a tornado that's going to hit. This stillness is not good. Get in your bunker." And that's
Right.
that's what like there's as much as I feel this relief, there's some part of me that's saying, "Seth, don't let up. Stay vigilant."
Well, Seth, I mean, there are still political prisoners that are incarcerated right now, the J6 peaceful protesters, and they need to be freed on day one. This regime threw Tina Peters in prison in Colorado for merely trying to save a copy, which was her job, of the electronic voting machines for election integrity. They criminalized her. These are the people who outlawed voter ID in California. And the only states that Kamala won were the states where there's no voter ID. What does that tell you? And these are the people who it's now clear in retrospect, they fabricated 18 to 20 million votes
Yeah.
in 2020 to get Joe Biden elected. Utterly fabricated. Biden was never elected. The last 4 years have been a hoax, and it should be nullified. Every law, every executive order that Joe Biden signed needs to be reversed. And frankly, there's a lot of people sitting in Congress right now who were never elected, and they need to be booted out of the place. We need to have a full audit of the elections over the last 8 years, among many things, obviously. But you're right. I don't trust these Democrats at all. I don't trust the deep state at all. And history has proven that they're not going to let up. They're plotting right now. And I think the only reason that we did not experience, dirty bombs or false flag attacks before this election is that they thought they could rig it. They were confident in their ability to rig it because they believed their own polls. Their polls were wrong. Their polls were off. Trump got a massive turnout of even Hispanics, for example, and a much larger percentage of the black vote than anyone anticipated. And so Trump won 2024 kind of the way he won 2016. It was despite the rigging, despite the cheating. And I think this is God's last chance for this republic. This is it. This is the last window of opportunity. And if the radical reforms, or I should say, aggressive, spirited reforms, if they don't get underway, then this nation is finished because the deep state will find a way to either pull the rug out from under Trump, cause so much chaos, or collapse the monetary system that, and I've even warned about this, Trump could end up being the president of nothing. He could end up, sobbing on the floor in the Oval Office as the entire United States, at least the centralized federal government, collapses because the dollar collapses. And there is no United States anymore. And then we'll end up with regional nation states and probably a lot of domestic warfare in places like California, Oregon, and Washington, where the Marxists want to control everything, but most of the population doesn't want to be enslaved under people like Gavin Newsom. So we are headed for some very, very trying times, but also potential opportunities to create a future without, as Kamala says, what the burden of what has been. Wasn't that one of her lines? I mean, we got rid of Kamala, so we've already unburdened ourselves from that, or at least we're in the process. So there is hope for the future, but it's not going to be a walk in the park.
No, I agree. And while I do think that if we take a step back and look at the past, say, 8 years or so, go back to 2016, I really kind of subscribe to the idea that 2016 was supposed to be 8 years of Hillary. And that in many ways was going to be the dismantling of America. And that,
Yes,
Trump did, he put a massive wrench. It wasn't just a wrench, like he parked a tank in front of their plans, right? Like that was how big of
that's
a,
right.
but it doesn't mean that they just gave up. And so what concerns me is that if you look back at 2020, I really do think that 2020 was really all assets deployed. They were in emergency mode, and they did, as we saw, even very blatantly had to cheat and then use the media to cover the cheating, even using Fox News to, hey, call Arizona early for, for
That's
Biden, all
right.
the things that we witnessed, of course. And so while I do think that their power and their strength in 2020 was much stronger, I think that was their peak. I think that right now we're seeing a massive decline. If you look at just look at the infighting between the Harris camp and the Biden camp, and I even saw that I think that there was I think Jack Sobiek has put something out saying that there were reports of Jill Biden kind of smiling and laughing when the results were in. That she was happy to see Kamala lose because they were there was a coup, like there was a coup within a coup, right? How funny is it,
That's
right?
right.
That
Yeah,
the for those of the kind of the idea of karma, right, coming back at you, right? It's like, well, you steal the country, well now your second's going to steal steal your presidency from you. But though I think that the deep state is very fractured and very weak, that also, for a lot of people, would be a major sign of concern because a rattlesnake backed into a corner is the most dangerous animal. And so that is what I'm really focused on here is how does this look? Because I think that they are, a lot of the policies Trump will be putting into place, a lot of what RFK will be doing, these are things that will be directly dismantling their systems. But it makes me think, okay, what's next? Because I don't think it's going to be this peaceful process.
absolutely. It won't be a peaceful process. Um, I think what you've pointed to here is the fact that in the woke system, which is what the Obama, Biden, Harris regime was, remember in the woke system, the most incompetent get moved up to the top levels to where nothing functions. And that is to our benefit in the sense that they are too incompetent to pull off their own nefarious goals in some ways. And that might be one of the reasons why we didn't see false flag operations before the election is they're just too incompetent to pull them off. Now, during the Obama years, Obama was a genius compared to Biden and Kamala, obviously. Uh, Obama and Eric Holder, they could pull off things like Operation Fast and Furious, and they did so, even though that still didn't have the impact that they wanted, which was a nationwide gun confiscation and banning the Second Amendment. But at least they could pull off operations like that. Today, I see so much incompetence that they're not very good at anything other than just chaos and destruction. However, outside forces are very competent. For example, the narcos, the drug cartels in Mexico, are very well versed in logistics, distribution, and transport. Obviously, that's what they do. They do it with, of course, drugs and human trafficking. And I'm not complimenting them in a sense. I mean, I'm not approving of what they do, but they also do it with avocados. By the way, the narcos run the avocado trade, and they take a piece of every avocado. And I remember that every day because I drink avocado smoothies. Like see, this is part of my avocado smoothie today. Like there's a little bit of this that went to effectively, the narcos that run the avocado farms. Thing is, when the narcos team up with communist China, which is exactly what has happened, south of the border of Arizona, they've got drone transport systems there right now that are flying across the border and dropping off into Arizona payloads. And this is from some of the intel I received, payloads of things like improvised explosive devices, as well as anti-personnel mines. And this equipment is very effectively being brought into the US and staged in the United States. And I'm told that Arizona is going to be the actual invasion point when the opportunity comes. So stay with me. I'm getting to my main point here. I'm not just randomly rambling, but as there's weakness in DC with Trump as president, as there is weakness, it will invite invasions, incursions along our border, incursions by drug cartels backed by Chinese military experience. And the Chinese are very, very competent. They don't allow woke people to run their militaries.
Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote humans flourishing and to create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With 350 academic programs as of June 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides you a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. So find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. It's private, Christian, and affordable. So folks, visit gcu.edu. Again, that's gcu.edu.
I mean, they get things done. They are outstanding engineers. They are outstanding builders, manufacturers. They have 200 times the naval dry dock capacity than the entire United States of America. That's what China does. And remember, I lived in Taiwan. You know, I speak a fair amount of Chinese, and I know that culture better than most Americans. They are smart, capable people. I don't agree, obviously, with communism, to be clear, but they are smart, capable people. And they, combined with the narcos south of the border, they could take a third of Arizona. They could just come in and take it and realize that over the last several years, since February of 2022, with the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, the US has depleted the munitions and the artillery shells and the tank rounds of the National Guard bases all across this country. They've shipped everything to Ukraine, where it's been burned up trying to fight Russia, which turned out to be the worst military idea ever. Never get into a land battle with the Russians, because Russia will destroy you, right? That's what they've done to Ukraine. But now the US has virtually no defenses. So Seth, if there's enough political weakness in Washington, D.C., our country is going to be invaded. That's my concern. So it's not just domestic warfare by the saboteurs. It's a potential for an invasion. We may start losing territory in this country, and it could happen under Trump.
I mean, in a lot of ways, we've already lost a lot of it, considering how much of our farmland is owned by China, especially land that is right next to military installations. I mean, we're looking at, they've already got land in America and they've got troops in America, which is just insane to consider.
Yep.
And so, even the idea of Trump deporting all the illegals, which I think that, look, my wife is from Australia. She is a legal immigrant. She came into this country, which is, I'm all for immigration, but legal immigration. But even the idea that Trump can deport these millions of illegals, I mean, put yourself into the mindset of someone that is a multiple homicide committing gang member from Venezuela that was in prison for a life sentence for chopping up his opponent, whatever it was, that gets released and comes to America and gets a debit card with free food and everything that you have here, and is sitting around looking around as if like you drop a lion into a deer pen, right? Just thinking, gosh, these Americans are just ripe for the taking. Are they going to, I think it's a little bit naive to think that they're just going to, oh, okay, Trump's in now. Okay, I'm coming out now. Here's all my illegal guns. Here's my hand grenades, my RPGs, everything else they've got. Even that part alone, right? Let's just say that people say, look, Seth and Mike, you guys are too doom and gloom, and this is what it is. Well, okay, let's just look at just trying to remove these illegals, especially the ones that are military, gang members, et cetera. That right there could be enough to have what some would call a civil war, a war on American soil. I could see that we would have them taking over apartment complexes, buildings, taking over small cities and towns, barricading. That could be in every city across America as soon as Trump says, okay, we're going to start deporting people.
Yeah, what you're going to end up with is you'll see governors like Newsom that will offer sanctuary protection status to illegals, which will congregate more and more in the cities, where the governor will actually take over hotels and may even just begin taking over. There's a lot of commercial real estate that's currently not occupied because of the post-COVID collapse. Those may somehow be transformed into shelters. They're not really set up for plumbing and restrooms and so on for living, but in an emergency, you can camp in them. But I think you're going to end up with illegals congregating in those sheltered cities, and then you're going to have Trump's federal efforts effectively going to war against the city-controlled police forces and governor-controlled guard forces. And you're going to see some National Guard units that will side with the Constitution, and some guard units that will side with their tyrannical governor that is committing treason. It's hard to imagine this not going into some kind of a kinetic domestic conflict. I mean, unless Trump's just going to roll over and say, we're not going to deport the illegals, but I don't see that happening. No way. And remember, I've had meetings with high-level law enforcement in the state of Texas, for example. They've told me they're ready to hand over, huge numbers of illegals to the feds, to ICE, if the feds would just take them and deport them. The only reason they're not handing them over right now, like the jails are filled in most of the counties around Texas. They're already filled. They're filled with illegals, but the feds won't take them. So the minute the feds will take them, boom, they can get booted out, and then local cops can go out. This is what I've been told. They can just do traffic stops all day long. Traffic stops, because, and this isn't racist to say this, because I've lived in South America. Most of the illegals, when they come to Texas, they drive like they're still living in, South America. So they think the shoulder is a third lane. They don't think that traffic laws apply to them, et cetera, right? So very easy to pull them over, run those people, and find out that they're illegal. So the way that most of the, quote, rounding up of illegals is going to happen in places like Texas and Oklahoma and, all the red states, is it's just going to be traffic stops. That's how you get them. And then you kick them out. And so that doesn't have to be a war. But in the blue states, different story. That's going to end up going kinetic, I'm afraid.
It's such a kind of a crazy scenario to look at, because if you look at the Constitution and how the federal government works in the states, and the power increasing as you get more local, with ultimately your local sheriff being the person that is supposed to protect you, with the strength of the Constitution from a tyrannical federal government, it's kind of a crazy scenario to imagine that, okay, let's just say that, Trump would represent a good version of a federal government, but then you've got tyrannical state governors. Well, then if you have the federal government then using military force to remove a tyrannical state government, like it's almost an inverse of what the founding fathers were worried about, which was the federal government becoming tyrannical and then giving the states the power to protect themselves from the federal government. So it's a very strange situation that we're entering into.
Well, there's a lot of clarity once you declare illegals to be an invading enemy occupying force. And that's a declaration that I'm sure people like Steve Bannon are beginning to put into the ears of Trump. Or maybe the left ear, because his right ear may not still be fully functioning after, that hypersonic round clip in the ear. I'm sure he suffered some hearing damage, but, God bless him for still being alive, man. That was a rough, that was a very close call. But people like Steve Bannon are warriors. And I'm with Steve on this very point. You have to declare the invasion. Michael Yon, I was just talking to Michael Yon. He said you need to arrest Alejandro Mayorkas, arrest and prosecute the traitors who committed the treason by setting up invasion camps, funding them, running the invasion camps. This is not a time to go kumbaya with the enemies of America. This is a time to declare them to be enemies. And then that means that governors that are harboring combatant, enemy forces in America, well, you treat them like you would under any rule of law, any governor that's harboring an enemy occupying force. You arrest them. You arrest them, and you do it with the military if you have to. But I know exactly how this is going to go. The left-wing media is going to say, see, it's Hitler. He's turned into Hitler. Look, he's arresting Governor Newsom. Well, guess what? Newsom forced that situation by refusing to uphold the rule of law and refusing to protect America. You can't have a state like California that just lets everybody in to where they can just access all the other states. You have to force, and it's going to come down to Trump administration force. You have to force governors of states to obey their sworn oaths. That's what this comes down to. If they're not protecting the border, they are violating their oaths of office, and that's reason enough to remove them from power.
I certainly agree with that. Now, you mentioned the media, and this is another part of it. 'Cause, you probably remember, I think it was back in 2019 or 2018, I forget which time it was, that there was an executive order that Trump put out, which had to do with election interference. And it talked about any foreign enemies that were caught interfering with the election, all their assets within America would be seized, right? And I think it even mentioned media. And so, like, what does this look like? Because if you look at our media, and I've done some deep dives into the media in America, and what you find is that a lot of these, editors, a lot of the journalists have done programs in China where they're most likely they're blackmailed. They were seduced through honeypots. They were bribed and blackmailed. Even very openly, because I worked in the newspaper industry in New York City. I remember back when the Wall Street Journal, I think it was Wall Street Journal was one of the main publications they were actively putting in China Daily into their newspaper. Right, there's
That's right.
multi-million-dollar contracts to basically take a state-run propaganda organ of China, which the China Daily, which was their English language Chinese newspaper, was literally a state-run, a communist-run newspaper. With the aim of pushing communist propaganda into America. They've got multi-million-dollar contracts with American media companies to put this newspaper inside of their other newspaper and distribute it to the American people. I mean, to me, what we're getting into is, this is levels of treason, because I think that we have to frame this discussion of war. And if you ask people that are higher up in the Chinese military, for instance, they'll say, we've been at war with America for decades. It's just not conventional warfare. It's unrestricted warfare, right? Or if you go back and you look at the leaked speech from General Chi Hao-chien, right, and that Jeff Nyquist has published on his website about their long-term plan of colonizing America. So this isn't your normal your normal 4 years. And so with Trump getting in, as much as I want to be careful with how I word this, because it's easy to take this out of context, like I would love to see the mainstream media apparatus dismantled. Like, I would love to see these are the people, these are the systems that are being actually tried for treason against the American people, for knowingly lying, covering up crimes of election theft, covering up the crimes of the big pharmaceutical companies, knowingly murdering American citizens, knowingly causing birth defects and stillbirths, etc. I mean, I think that what we're getting into is it's a pretty heavy change, I think, that needs to be made.
Well, okay, a very complex issue, and we certainly don't want to end up in the business where the government decides what can be printed.
Yeah,
right.
It's tricky.
But there's actually a lot of clarity on this, which is that most of what you're calling the mainstream media, they don't function as a free press. They receive memos from the CIA and instructions from the CIA that tells them what to say. And it's obvious because on any big issue like COVID, they all have the same talking points, the same exact words in many cases. So what you need to do is you need to outlaw government influence over the media, or government scripts or government control over the media. And you need to decentralize the media. So what that means is antitrust breaking up of the media conglomerates. That's how you attack this, because I don't want to be in a position where some central source controls who says this, or whether this is allowed to be said or not, but rather, I would rather have a multitude of independent, decentralized voices that are competing based on the accuracy and rationality of what they're reporting, right? That also means you have to take a deep investigative look at the AP and Reuters, both of which are deeply compromised by the deep state. The AP and Reuters, no doubt, are shills for the deep state. And if that can be proven with evidence, then they both need to be completely dismantled, just completely shut down for that reason, not because of what they said, but because they are functioning as proxies for a deep state propaganda system. That's why. And the same thing goes for all the media outlets that have been nothing but CIA puppets. Yeah, shut them down because they've been CIA puppets. But ultimately, I don't want the government in the business of deciding what is truth, what is science, what is medicine.
Folks, we are officially in the time of the year where eating becomes off balanced, way off balanced. Parties, holidays, family gatherings always mean more snacks, more sweets, and generally indulging in all the wrong foods. And when your eating habits get off balance, so can you. That's why I strongly recommend Balance of Nature's daily supplements. Their fruit and veggie supplements are sourced from whole fruit and vegetable ingredients, all the things you might be missing, and all the things you need to make up for being off balance during this eating season. Make sure you're getting more of a variety of fruit and vegetable ingredients at every step of the way with Balance of Nature. Start a trend toward better health today with my special startup offer. Whether you order online or call them direct, you must use the promo code SETH, that's SETH, to get 35% off plus free shipping and their money back guarantee. So, folks, call them today at 800 2468 751 and use discount code SETH to get your discount, or order online at balanceofnature.com. And again, use discount code SETH to get 35% off.
And the answer, as with all these things, Seth, the answer is decentralization. That's the answer to the question of money, of medicine, of science, of government, trade, speech, you name it. It's all about decentralization, which means a much smaller government ending the creation of the dollar. If they can't print dollars, they can't use dollars to buy off the media. So the core causes of these problems very often just comes back to Richard Nixon taking us off the gold standard in 1971. And since then, the dollar printing's gone haywire, and that has created like a multi-headed beast. And the head of that beast needs to be chopped off. And the beast needs to be brought down to size. And I don't mean, through violence. Frankly, this beast system is going to set itself on fire. It's going to destroy itself. And it's going to destroy most of the wealth of the American people in the process. We need to be ready for what comes after that. The real golden age is what happens after the dollar burns itself down. And that's where I say we need to be looking ahead at what's coming and how we structure a society rooted in decentralization. You don't want to just build back the same kind of system we have right now. You'll just repeat history again.
You want to build back better, right?
Build back better. We want to build back butter because we want food freedom, right? We want to build back raw milk. We want to build back decentralization is what we want. And that means we've got to teach the American people that government is not your savior, and government does not give you your rights. Your rights come from God. And we were supposed to have lent some rights, some authority to the government for our benefit, and that's been perverted and twisted long ago. So when that comes to an end, don't resurrect the beast. Build something different.
So I want to talk a little bit about healing because I really believe that we right now, if you go on the Twitter, probably every other post I'm seeing is a video of some liberal freaking out, woman shaving her head, or all these people having these massive meltdowns over the fact that Trump got in, and it's there's a lot of celebration around that. But I think that fundamentally, though, that obviously there are people, and I saw you had a response to one of Tracy Beans's posts where she was talking about forgiveness and everything, and you made a good point saying, yeah, but there's also people that actively tried to kill us, and she responded to your reply to her post and saying, yes, that's why I was kind of specific about the people that were deceived, and not the people that were criminally proactively trying to murder Americans. But I do think that we have to figure out how to get past this. But I think that the only way that will really happen is that we have to be the ones to extend the olive branch. Now, I'm not saying that we take people that again should be tried for treason and should be in prison for the rest of their lives. That's a different story, right? But I think there's a lot of Americans that have just been deceived because what they're up against, or what we're up against, is the world's most sophisticated propaganda machine that really has ever existed. I mean, it makes any propaganda from a previous dictator look like child's play, considering the AI and the algorithms and all the things they can do to manipulate behavior. So I feel like that we have to in some way we have to figure out how to come back as Americans again, but I really think that it's our turn to turn the other cheek. Because if we have this mentality of, well, you were calling us names all this time, you were calling us racist and everything, and now it's like now that we've got the upper hand, we're going to go after them. In a lot of ways, are we that much better than them? Because ultimately, one side, if you have two people in a war, either A, one side kills the other side completely, or B, there's some sort of agreement that, hey, we have to carry on together. But I feel like that it's actually on us to be able to find forgiveness and compassion while still having justice for those that need it, but being able to bring America back together again. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, Seth, I hear what you're saying. However, healing requires transformation.
Mm,
And I have yet to see any leftists admit that they were wrong about anything. They're just sad that they lost, and they celebrated the idea of Trump being shot. And
that's
they would have
true.
cheered if his brains were blown out on national television. They would have been laughing and smiling and having parties with Trump brain blowing out parties all day long. Okay. Now, and I'm going to bring in some scripture on this. When Jesus was casting out demons, he didn't walk up to the person that was infested with a demon and say, "Oh, I'm gonna hug the demon and love the demon and I'm gonna forgive the demon." He said, "Demons out, cast you out, get out of this person because you are an evil entity." And when we're taking out the trash in America, and I'm going to say trash are those people who despise liberty, who despise our Constitution, and who are seething with hatred towards Trump, towards white people, towards men. They have been indoctrinated with extreme hatred. But to say that they are a victim is to say that they're not responsible as adults for their own state of mind and their own choices. They're not victims unless they're, 6 years old here. These are adults. They make their own choices. They've chosen a path of hatred and vengeance. I am very much open to extending an olive branch once there is reconciliation, which means accountability. If they want to come out and confess to all of their election rigging crimes and confess to all of their lawfare and confess that they've been running a brainwashing operation to indoctrinate children in the universities and turn them into hate-filled left-wing child mutilating lunatics, yeah, if they want to confess all that, let's have 6 months of confessions from the left. And then we can start the healing process. Until then, no way am I going to consider these people to be victims. If Trump had lost, they would have dispatched execution teams the very next day, kicking in doors, arresting people, murdering people across America. People probably like you, Seth, and people like me. We're on the list. I mean, have no illusions. They threw Steve Bannon in jail. They raided Roger Stone. They tried to murder Trump at least twice. These are not victims. They are horrible human beings. Until they transform, we should offer them no mercy whatsoever. Once they offer to transform, once they are willing to take a path of healing, yeah, I'm all open to it. It's kind of like dealing with a drug addict. And I've had this in my own family. I lost a relative years ago to a fentanyl overdose. If you deal with addicts or alcoholics in your family, they're always asking for forgiveness. And you say, yeah, happy to forgive you once you stop using heroin. Well, the left needs to stop their hate heroin. I mean, you turn on The View every day and they're preaching hatred. And they're preaching, I mean, Rachel Maddow was saying the government should punish Elon Musk and take away all his contracts. Spoken like a true fascist. And late night television, nothing but anti-Trump hatred for the last 8-9 years. Where are the apologies for that, huh? Where are the apologies for pushing the vaccines that killed at least 1 million Americans and maimed 5 or 6 million more? I'm waiting for the apologies, Seth. I don't know about you. I'm waiting for the apologies. I'm a humanitarian. I can have compassion. I can shake hands with people once they admit to what they've done. Until then, no way. No mercy.
No, it's a very good point. And I guess it's also, I think that it's the your neighbor with the Biden sign that you're still, on speaking terms with. That's the person I think we have to figure out how to come together with. I certainly agree. The people that are, at the high levels of this, that are orchestrating this, the ones that are, or the ones at the low levels, but that are openly mocking, and kind of calling, or even that you saw the polls before where they were calling for the unvaxxed to be put into concentration camps, basically. I mean, these are
Yep.
things that, yeah, I
Yep.
agree that we have to make an example over this because, otherwise, if evil goes unchecked, where do we go from there? I mean, it's you're absolutely right with that.
Well, and Seth, I don't trust your neighbor with a Biden sign. I don't trust their judgment and I don't trust their morality. They have no morality. And when things get tough, as is going to happen, your neighbor with a Biden sign, who probably doesn't have any stored food, that's the neighbor that's going to come over with whatever handgun they got their hands on and stick a gun in your face and say, "Give me your food," because they have no morals. They don't believe in morality, as proof by the fact that they could support a demonic, immoral political party. Never trust them, never turn your back on them. You're just inviting a predatory response from them. There are no innocent people who voted for Kamala. Understand, they are part of a system of trying to overthrow this nation, of a system of intense evil, illegality, child mutilations, child trafficking, lawfare against innocent Americans. They themselves are not innocent. They are complicit. They are complicit in that system. And the reason they're having a mental illness breakdown is because their artificial reality is beginning to be shattered. That shattering is going to increase dramatically in the months ahead. As that increases, let me ask you, Seth, are those people going to become more rational, more moral, and more reasonable people?
I'd say it depends on the person because when you go back to the drug addict analogy, right? Because I unfortunately grew up and one of my siblings was by 20 was a heroin addict, and I was I saw that same behavior. It wasn't even them, right? It wasn't even them coming back. I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. But hey, can I get $20 for some groceries? It's like no, 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 no,
Right.
no. Hold on, I see, because maybe what helped this person actually get through that was hitting rock bottom. And so if that shattering, I think it can go one of two ways. I think one is the rock bottom, the soul searching, the staring in the mirror and saying, "Gosh, how did I get this where I've burnt every bridge. I've done this." And then those people come along. That's one thing. But I certainly agree, though, that there's the other side, which is the people that, they won't stop. And it never becomes a game of, beyond how do I get my next trick? How do I get my next hit? Right? Where can I get the next score of heroin? And so I think that you'll see probably both. You might see the ones that shatter that then upon that shattering, that's what then breaks that illusion for them. They realize, gosh, I was wrong. And maybe those are the ones that come to you, as you talked about, and say, look, Mike, like you were right, man. I'm really, really sorry. But you also might see the ones that just shatter and then they get completely controlled by their demon nature and they just
Well,
react
well,
violently. And
right. And I am open to those people who get red pilled and realize, whoa, that they were totally brainwashed. And look, when I was in college, I wasn't really politically active, but at that time I thought Bill Clinton was awesome because that's what was on TV versus, Bob Dole, who looked like 1,000 years old at the time. And so, yeah, I understand that any of us could be fooled. Of course, we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have 1,000 choices of information. We just had CNN. But if someone comes to the realization, whoa, I'm rethinking all of this. I mean, look, Trump used to be a Democrat too. RFK Jr. left the Democrat Party, so he got red pilled. Same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, the list goes on and on. So yes, that process happens. But that's what we have to look for is people who are willing to wake up and realize that they've been played. And you're right, they're going to go in one of two directions. A lot of people are going to wake up, realize what happened. Some people are going to go deeper down the hole of mental illness. Those are the people that will be very dangerous
yeah,
in your
certainly.
neighborhood, in your cities, in your country. And you never turn your back on those people.
Very good point. So, gosh, we already, our hour's already come nearly to an end. I feel like we talked
No
for 10
way.
minutes. It's already
Wow.
been about 55 minutes of recording. So before we sign off, I want to make sure that folks know about Brighteon and about what you're doing because what I believe that you're someone that you don't just talk, you do actually, and you do 10 times or 1,000 times more than you talk. And you talk a lot because you have a podcast every day, right? But what you're doing is you're matching that with everything that you're doing, your large language library, Brighteon, your health food stores. So tell us about, I guess whatever you're working on that you think is most important for people to look at and visit after this interview. Where would you send people to?
Well, thank you, Seth. I appreciate what you do and the work that you do, and I love these conversations with you. By the way, we should do this more often. But yes, people can find me. I'm the founder of Brighteon.com, the free speech video platform that's on the screen behind me here. I'm the publisher of naturalnews.com. But you may not know I'm also now an ordained minister, and I've published 100 Bible sermons, and that's at abundance.church. And our church has launched recently, and we've already raised over $550,000 in emergency food aid for the American people. So, folks, I have a heart for America. I have compassion for the American people. We've sent about $300,000 of food to North Carolina, and we've got 100,000 going to Florida to be staged there. We've got a couple 100,000 ready for the next big emergency, which is coming. I work to help people in every way that I can. But I have discernment, and we have to have that discernment between good and evil right now, between those who are constructive, who want to be part of the future of human civilization, versus those who are demons. Like I said earlier, Jesus cast out the demons. He didn't say, let's shake hands with the demons. He said, get out because you're evil. We have to have that discernment right now. And I believe the church has failed us in many ways in this country. Our government has failed us. Our legal system has failed us. Our universities have failed us. And it's time for a real spiritual revolution in this country where we are honest about what it's going to take to restore the liberties that our founding fathers gave us. So it's going to be some tough decisions. It's not going to be all, huggy, everybody kumbaya. It's going to be some tough times ahead, but that is the only pathway to integrity and to a nation that matters. So that's my take, Seth.
I'm on the same page, Mike, and I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for giving me your time. I know how busy you are, so it really is an honor to have you back on the show. And I agree. Let's figure out how to do this more often because I'm
Love to.
amazed. I mean, it literally feels like we talked for 15 minutes. So
I know it's incredible, but I enjoy sharing time with you here, and I love the conversations that we have. So, yep, let's do it again soon. And thank you for having me on.
absolutely, take care and God bless, Mike. So obviously everyone's glued to the election right now. How's Trump doing in the polls? How did Kamala's recent interview affect her chances? Well, I'm excited to show you a groundbreaking app that gives you a whole new perspective on the election. It's called Kalshi, and it's the first legal exchange where you can actually place trades on any event, like a presidential election. So Kalshi has hundreds of markets to trade on, from presidential elections to who will control the House to inflation, interest rates, even whether the government will shut down. And what's really cool about the platform is that you can trade on your opinions to make money or hedge risks that may impact you. Additionally, you can check the market odds, which come from thousands of people trading. So these odds can be highly predictive, which is why these markets are referred to as prediction markets. So let's take an example, which is the presidential election. So you can see that right now the race is at Trump 59%, Harris at 41%. Right. So what that means is that the 41% of people that are buying yes on Kamala for 41 cents will get a $1 payout if she wins. So the odds change real time as events change. So there's been a lot of studies on the value of prediction markets, and I found them really useful when tracking what's happening in the election because I don't trust the polls. So Kalshi, though, is the first regulated place to trade on these types of markets, and we're happy to have them as a sponsor. So the election markets are now live to trade, and they are the first regulated place where you can do this. So you can sign up using my link Kalshi.com/wholehouse. Again, that's Kalshi, KALSHI.com/wholehouse, HOLEHOUSE. And what's great is that the first 500 traders who deposit $50 in their account will get a free $20 credit. So again, folks, you can start today by going to Kalshi.com/wholehouse.